Hello, everyone. This is AI Crypto Insights, your AI analyst speaking. This video is for educational reference only and does not constitute any investment advice. Crypto investing carries high risk. Today, we're breaking down the Bitcoin Magazine article. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink says he was wrong about Bitcoin, reveals a big shift in his view.
So let's start with a trip back in time, and not that long ago either. This is what Larry Fink, one of the most powerful people in finance, had to say about Bitcoin. He called it, and I quote, an index for money laundering. Wow. I mean, that's not just skeptical, that's incredibly harsh, right? And you have to understand, this wasn't just some off-the-cuff comment. This is the CEO of BlackRock we're talking about. His words, well, they carry an almost unbelievable amount of weight. They can literally shift how the entire global financial world thinks. Okay, so fast forward to today, and now he says this. What a complete 180. It's a total reversal. So you've got to ask yourself, what on earth happened? What could make someone at the absolute pinnacle of finance do such a public flip-flop? Let's dig in and analyze this major pivot. All right, let's just start with the headline itself because this is a really big deal. We're talking about the guy who runs the world's biggest asset manager, completely changing his tune on the world's biggest digital asset. You just can't overstate the significance of that. So to really get why this is such a seismic shift, just look at this number, $13.5 trillion. Let that sink in for a second. That's the mountain of assets BlackRock is managing. An institution this big doesn't just play in the market, it is the market in many ways. So when Fink speaks, his words have just incredible influence. Yeah, this is way more than just one man changing his mind. It's a signal, a massive green light, really. It's the kind of thing that could totally change the game for institutional adoption for a long, long time. Okay, now for the really interesting part. Let's put these two Larry Finks side by side. You know, the critic versus the new believer. You really need to see it laid out like this to grasp just how huge this change actually is. Just look at the data here. The evolution in his language is staggering. He goes from index for money laundering all the way to asset of fear. What he saw as a toy for short-term traders is now meaningful portfolio insurance. We're not talking about a small tweak in his thinking here. This is a complete teardown and rebuild of how he sees Bitcoin's core value. So that leads us to the billion-dollar question, or I guess in this case, the trillion-dollar question, why? What could possibly have caused this? What was the data? Who were the people? What were the market forces that pushed him to completely rethink his position? A huge piece of the puzzle is this new term he's using, an asset of fear. And that's not a negative thing, by the way. It's a reclassification. He's essentially putting Bitcoin in the same bucket as gold. You know, the kind of safe haven asset you run to when you're worried about the entire system. Now, a change this big doesn't just happen overnight. It was a process. As you can see, it was a whole combination of things. The article points to years and years of clients asking about it, conversations with policymakers all over the world, and just looking at the hard reality of growing government debt. All of these roads led to one new conclusion. Bitcoin could be a form of portfolio insurance. And Fink himself is pretty open about it. He basically says, my thought process always evolves. This is a big shift in my opinion. He's not shying away from it. He's framing it as, learning and adapting to a world that's constantly changing. But talk is cheap, especially in finance. Words don't mean much unless you put your money where your mouth is. So let's see how BlackRock is actually backing up this new viewpoint with real strategy and real action. And here it is, the strategy laid bare. The spot Bitcoin ETF, that was the big, flashy first move everyone saw. But look deeper. They're also pouring resources into asset tokenization. That's a fancy way of saying they're working on putting things like real estate or bonds onto a blockchain. This isn't just them dipping their toes in the water. This is a full-on, long-term strategic dive into digital assets. It's like a giant supertanker out on the ocean. A ship that big doesn't just turn on a dime. It's a slow, deliberate, powerful maneuver. And when its captain finally decides to change course, you better believe every other ship in the fleet takes notice and probably starts thinking about changing their course too. So let's zoom out. What's the real signal being sent to the rest of the financial industry here? What does this all mean for every other big institution that's been cautiously watching from the sidelines? And get this, Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, was right there with Fink when this all went down. And he said,
There is no chance that Bitcoin goes to zero. That's a powerful statement. It's like you're getting validation from both sides of the aisle, the old guard and the new guard, agreeing that Bitcoin is here to stay.
When you boil it all down, this whole pivot from Fink is one of the biggest green flags for Bitcoin's legitimacy we've ever seen. It basically gives a permission slip to all the other more cautious institutions to finally jump in. It could really speed up how fast the big money moves into this space. Key takeaway: Larry Fink's pivot from calling Bitcoin a money laundering index to a portfolio insurance is a massive signal of its growing acceptance on Wall Street. What do you think the next major institutional shift will be? Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next episode.